Hey everyone, back with my report from the Future of Video conference in Marina del Rey, California. And I must start by saying that the future of video looks incredible. Saw some really mind-blowing and really innovative approaches and technologies that are being developed to really continue the growth of streaming and OTT and addressable video in general. Exciting conference. I'm really glad that I was here and look forward to bringing some of these solutions forward to our clients.
Hello and welcome to our first session of our 2023 Future of Video series. This year there is so much activity to follow and we're excited to start the year with a discussion of what's happened in 2022 and what's to come in 2023. We have an awesome lineup of speakers today and some great research to help set the stage for the discussions we'll be having. My name is Elizabeth Parks. I'm the president and CMO of Parks Associates, and I hope you're familiar with our research. For 37 years, we've been studying the broadband, smart home, and entertainment markets. In addition to the consumer market, we also look at the SMB market and the multi-dwelling markets. In addition, we've been looking at commercial buildings and understanding the impact of new technologies on the building environment. We produce about 80 syndicated reports a year and also do a lot of custom work to help companies have the best data to support their business decisions, especially with new product introductions or entering new markets. The next 90 minutes will feature discussions about the future of streaming and a presentation and Q&A from Serhad Dokin, CTO of Adia. We're going to be taking questions throughout the session, so please use the swap card Q&A chat and tell us what you want to know or comment on the conversation happening. I'm going to share some of Parks Associates data to set the stage. But first, I want to thank our early event sponsors, Rapid Response Monitoring and FPT Software. We'll host our in-person Future of Video event in LA in December, again in 2023, and so please consider sponsoring the event. Ashton Gambrell on our team would be happy to help you with any questions about any of our conferences. I'd also like to send a big thank you to the companies speaking for their time and contribution, and would encourage you to submit to speak if you're interested in sharing your perspectives on the future of streaming. Our first panel in a few minutes will bring in these amazing leaders in technology, and we'll discuss where we are in the evolution of streaming, the impact of advanced technology, and what's expected in 2023. But first, I want to share some of Parks Associates' research highlighting 3 key trends that we're seeing in the market. The 3 big trends are a result of advanced technologies, increases in connected device adoption, the new generation of video viewers and their habits, and the shift to a streaming video experience. The first big trend is that streaming is standard. This is data from Parks Associates' quarterly ongoing research survey work of 10,000 internet households. The past 5 years have seen a major shift in video consumption, with consumers viewing less and less over traditional cable and satellite managed networks and viewing more and more online. In 2017, 3/4 of all U.S. internet households reported having a traditional pay TV service, and 5 years later, that has dropped to 44%. Now, 87% of U.S. internet households pay for at least one streaming service, and streaming really is a primary way video is consumed in the U.S., although certainly traditional TV still has a large audience. This is creating more and more fragmentation in the market, as well as more choice for consumers. The younger viewers, though, have a mobile-first approach, and that's a direct result of the rise of connected devices, and that streaming video has freed video consumption from the TV set. While TVs are still the primary endpoint for watching video across all households, there is incredible variation demographically. Less than half of 18 to 24-year-olds say they watched any video at all on a TV in the past month. These younger viewers have a 100% streaming experience, and that certainly will be important in thinking about future video offerings. And when households are watching streaming services, they're stacking them to create their own bundle or group of service channels to watch. Parks Associates OTT Video Market Tracker counts more than 300 OTT services in North America. Now, 45% of U.S. internet households have 5 or more services. And consumers are experimenting with these services. They're hopping in and out based on the season for sports, based on fresh content offerings, and based on the deals and bundles that are offered. Churn will continue to be a great challenge for the industry. Ad-based streaming services are now the fastest business model growing in streaming. 31% of U.S. internet households report watching an ad-based AVOD or FAST service in the past month, up from just 18% in 2018. We saw an even greater jump for freemium services with a free ad-supported tier combined with the option of paid premium tiers. Ad-based services really are what people are used to with the lean-back linear experience. With the current uncertain economic climate, consumers are going to be evaluating their spending in all areas. And this is going to show up in streaming services, which I'll show you in just a minute. While ad-based services will change the market, the role of interactivity will also have a huge impact on revenues and engagement. These are new experiences that are just emerging that have set the new baseline of expectations for video viewing. While watching traditional TV or channel surfing provides that lean-back experience, streaming services will focus on create a more engaging and immersive experience. Roku and other innovators are launching into T-commerce with shoppable product placement and personalized ads to generate yet another revenue stream and user experience. Co-viewing apps that sync on-demand shows and movies with family and friends in another location at the exact same time, often with interactive features, are also emerging. And live interactive wagering and fantasy gameplay for a more interactive sports viewing experience are also emerging and driving revenues. All of these experiences assume a streaming future. The co-viewing experiences really will begin to emerge in 2023, and we're talking about direct social networking experiences while watching video. These are only emerging, but consumers show early indications of interest. Currently, 1 in 5 have tried a co-viewing application, and 25% said they'd be very likely to try this feature if offered by a video service in the future. The third big trend is the new focus on profitability. You may have read that killer line in Netflix's recent shareholder letter claiming everyone is losing money but us. Ultimately, content owners and service providers need to turn a profit, and in this next phase, expect decision-making to be driven more and more by the need to find the money. We see monthly spending dropping by quite a bit just in the past 6 months. Services are going to have to do a lot to maintain and grow, especially with the churn factors. This is going to be interesting to watch what we get back from our next round of data to see if these numbers hold, drop further, or go back up. There are a lot of factors right now impacting consumer spending with streaming services. So we are in the next stage of development, out of the development phase, and looking to leverage the new opportunities coming forward with streaming services. Figuring out how to reach consumers, what content is most in demand, what formats for video and advertising that goes along with it will continue to advance along with the market. We will keep track of all of the consumer adoption numbers and industry developments. If you need any research data to help support your efforts, please think of Parks Associates as your trusted resource. We also want to know what your company is working on, so consider setting up a briefing with our team to explain your solutions. We have just transformed our OTT video market tracker and are currently providing demos. So if you're in need of understanding subscriber numbers and everything related to these streaming services, please reach out to me or any of our team to set up a demo. Give us just a minute. We will be right back with our opening panel, and thanks for joining us today. Great. Welcome back. So we are excited to be hosting this first session, Explosion of Activity, the OTT streaming market. We're going to get started with a brief introduction from each speaker and then get into our conversation. A reminder that we are taking Q&A at any point and welcome any questions. So let's go ahead and bring our panelists in, and we will go ahead and start with an introduction from Stacy, the Senior Vice President of Team Whistle.
Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here, Elizabeth. Thank you for having me. I work for Team Whistle, and what we are is twofold. We are a publisher across social, reaching a Gen Z and millennial audience with positive, relatable content that meets at the intersection of sports and culture. Right now, we are divided across all of the platforms, but 40% of our viewership is being watched on YouTube. So I think there's a lot of interesting prospects with streaming and social and fandom and that growth together. So very excited to be participating in this. We also have an agency called Magnet, which takes the learnings that we've had from being a Gen Z publisher, as well as an MCN and the collected data from all the creators we work with, to offer that strategy, that content strategy, and how to monetize and how to reach fans externally to brands, properties, leagues, and all of that. So we do it quite a bit.
Great. Thank you so much. We're excited to have you here. Bart, it looks like you're up next for an introduction. Thanks for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you on our stage, virtually or in person.
Well, pleasure to be here. Yes, my name is Bart Spriester. I'm the General Manager and Vice President of Comcast Technology Solutions, the streaming, broadcast, and advertising business. Comcast Technology Solutions is a division of Comcast Cable. We've been providing technology to the media and entertainment industry for over 25 years, have lots of proven experience dealing and serving global operators, content providers, and advertising. And we do it, of course, we do that globally.
Great. Thank you so much for that introduction. Jason, we're going to go to you next.
Fantastic. Hello, everybody. I'm Jason Thibault, the Executive Director of the Streaming Video Technology Alliance. We're a global technical association that enables companies to come together and solve technical challenges related to delivering high quality video at scale. You can see as our membership covers many providers across the world who come together, network operators, service providers like CDNs, technology vendors, and of course the content platforms, to work in our working groups, which span the workflow and produce documents, software code, and other deliverables that we make publicly available for people to build better streaming experiences.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining a powerhouse association. So Danny, we're up with you next for an introduction.
Hi there, great to be here. I'm Danny Hamburger. I come from Plex Inc., and we're a global streaming and personal media platform that allows you to browse all of your content and any content on the internet in one place on any device. So we offer access to free entertainment with AVOD offerings with over 50,000 free movies and TV shows, as well as 300 free-to-stream live TV channels. So the conversation around FAST and that lean-back TV, trend is really relevant for us. The other thing, we're also global, so we're available in 120 countries, and then what we're really trying to do is be the one window into all of your streaming services, any that you're subscribed to, and help increase and make a discovery of what you want to watch easier, faster, and smarter.
Great.
Happy to be here.
Absolutely. Thanks for that explanation. Important role that you all are playing. So let's go ahead and see if we can get you all in the conversation. I really want to start off with the first question, talking about the evolution of streaming and where we are versus where we've been and where we're going. Stacy, I want to start off with you here, given your extensive experience sort of in the native online solutions, and maybe give us an explanation of where you think things have been and where we're going.
Sure. Well, very exciting. I'm sure, as everyone knows, in August, the numbers of viewers on streaming services has surpassed cable and broadcast TV for the first time ever. So I think that's very indicative of where we're heading. I think it started with the golden age of television, where we saw networks creating really robust, really thoughtful content that was resonating with audiences widely. I think the Gen Z audience wanted more freedom and accessibility and choice. And so they were leaning towards a solution in which they were able to select more cautiously. I think we saw the golden age of streaming, which brought a lot of great things in terms of hearing underserved voices and letting creators have a platform that didn't necessarily have that ability prior. I think there was a lot of spending on content. It was sort of an approach, throwing sort of everything at the wall for the consumer to ensure that there was a really robust library of content for them to have. I think eventually what started to happen was subscriber growth domestically started to slow, and that sort of allure, that initial allure was becoming clearer to Wall Street that they needed to seek profitability. And so this sort of narrative change, there's still room for global expansion, but that was sort of where things shifted. So with the wars came sort of a long-term competition. And then eventually, I think we saw the bubble burst recently with, people like Discovery Warner talking about needing to cut major titles like Batgirl from their library because of money that would need to be allocated for residuals. So I just think there's a shift in terms of approach and strategy that people are taking. So I think we're going to see a lot of more safe choices in 2023 in terms of content and reaching that audience. So I would say that's where we are now, but I think in 2023, there's going to be a rumble of the bundles, so to speak, to see some consolidation and people coming together. I think there's going to be sports is going to be the next sort of battleground for everyone. And there's a lot of interesting prospects. And then social will weigh into that as well, as you said, Elizabeth, with this sort of fandom that is really necessary for that direct-to-consumer experience.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there with all that you said, but I think right on. And, Bart, we talk about this idea of have we peaked with subscription video services? The saturation in the market has really changed the dynamics versus just a few years ago. So, any comments you'd like to make on that and where the next round of revenue will be coming from?
Yeah, exactly. So phase one of streaming is done. SVOD has peaked. SVOD has been the easy button to get into the streaming wars. And I think, reaching more subscribers and generating the revenue that all the streamers need and, frankly, our customers needs a diverse hybrid business model approach. In fact, if you look at all the major streamers out there, I think Amazon Prime is probably the only one that has all of the SVOD, AVOD, TVOD, and the FAST models deployed, I believe. And in fact, all the models have, advantages and disadvantages to them. But I think the key for all streamers to do right now is to make sure they're mining their data to determine which models work in what regions to maximize their revenue. And but it will require hybrid models for sure. I mean, look, Disney and Netflix just rolled out AVOD in 2022, and I think they're going to go into even additional models in 2023. So, yep, we're at peak SVOD in 2022.
Yeah, so everybody's trying to figure out, how to tweak their models or introduce new models to, capture some of that revenue. And of course, that's really dependent on all these advanced technologies that are, getting integrated into the whole workflow, the digital value chain. And so, Jason, do you want to make any comments here on the role of technology, maybe even the pace of how quickly things are happening with tech, and whether the industry and consumers are able to keep up with everything?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we see this in lots of industries, right? The tech is far outpacing the market and the business models. Just look at Web3. So we now have we're seeing a push. I even sit on an advisory board of a company, Edge Video, that is doing exactly that, trying to push the idea of tokens and currencies into, video watching. So we're seeing these models try to meet the technology that's available out there, and it's very interesting, right? So we have a very robust streaming video technology stack. I mean, we're talking, like what's been said already is that we peaked from an SVOD perspective. The technology's there for live sports, for SVOD, for AVOD, for TVOD. It's all there. It's just a matter of implementation, the correct way to implement in an interoperable way, which is something that again that we tackle at the SVTA, and then getting consumers to come to it. So you're going to see a lot of innovation over the next few years, technological innovation in the streaming experience. So again, like we talked about, immersive video and immersive experiences and social experiences, we're going to see a lot of that. It doesn't necessarily mean those will be the winning business models. We're just going to see a lot of experimentation, because one of the cool aspects of streaming is that it allows for experimentation. Traditional broadcast television does not. So if you look back on the years when we tried OCAP and MoCA and interactive versions of cable operator packages, it was really hard to get people to buy in because they just didn't understand, and it was hard to implement, and it took a long time. Streaming isn't like that, right? Like all web-based technologies, super fast and easy to iterate on. So we're going to see a lot of these really cool models start to come out, and we'll see them rise up really quickly, potentially die, potentially stagnate, potentially plateau, grow even more, transform and evolve. It's a really exciting time right now from a technology perspective to watch the streaming market.
Absolutely. And some of this speaks to the relationship change that a consumer or a video viewer has with the service provider, and of course the direct to consumer model that has now emerged, versus the what we saw with cable, the aggregation and the opportunity to choose a bundle of channels in a package. So I want to stick on this point and see, Bart or Jason, if you have any additional comments on just the fact that we've gotten to a point where technology does work and it's reliable, and that reliability is helping advance things, along with the experience in the home with broadband speeds and Wi-Fi in the home. So Jason or Bart, do either of you want to comment anything additionally there?
Well, maybe I'll say that Jason's right about the technology and streaming and fail fast, which is what happens. But look at Amazon's Thursday Night Football kickoff this year, the Bucks and the Chiefs. They had a 20 camera shoot, 2 sky cams, and they had the uniforms chipped where they could do next gen stats. I mean, that's amazing. That's a streaming production. Of course, the NBA is getting into streaming. Apple Plus had the MLB stuff. So I think the technology is there. It's super exciting. Jason's right. There's going to be lots of experimentation. Look, there's going to be high-profile interviews. There's going to be game recaps. There's going to be behind the scenes. And the cool thing about all of this and all this technology and sports as a great streaming application is that sports fans are loyal to teams. They're not loyal to broadcasters. So this is the perfect content for kind of streaming providers to bring in new users and to pull them. I mean, I'm waiting for the pickleball app or the pickleball, sports that's going to be coming, right? Because I mean, that's the hot thing. So yeah, the tech is here and it's exciting.
Yeah, and to add to that, right? So the foundation of streaming has to be reliability. It has to just work, right? So people are used to, I sit on my couch, I take the remote, I push the power button, and the TV comes on, and the content's there, and I don't have to do anything. They expect the same thing from streaming. So that foundational technology that has been developed, and we are still iterating and improving it. But unlike broadcast television, which is driven by governmental standards, streaming is still kind of the wild, wild west, right? People will use bubblegum and duct tape to fix problems because they need that product to work. It's generating revenue. You can't have it fail. And so we're still working on improving the fundamental technologies of, again, that reliable service at scale, right? So as more people want to access higher bandwidth content and there's more people doing it concurrently, we're seeing big events like this. So there was a huge cricket match in India, which I think had 18 or 19 million concurrent viewers. It wasn't that high def, right? So when we start to add these characteristics, suddenly it's like, well, can we do 45 million concurrent users for that show? Can we do 100 million across the globe? And that's the thing about streaming as well, right? Unlike broadcast, it's global. One person may be delivering all that content with rights to deliver it in these different geographic areas. So again, the foundational technology is there to deliver. The scale is still being worked on for reliability. And like Bart talked about, all these extra technologies are just being layered on to provide for these really cool, experience experiments that are coming.
Yeah, absolutely. Really, really good points made there. Danny, I want to come to you and bring you in the conversation to talk a little bit about, the role of discovery. We've got all this content everywhere, right? And the challenge for consumers of choice and the volume of choice and services. So tell me a little bit about how you all are working on this problem.
Yeah, we're coming at it from a couple of different angles. We have a feature that we launched last year called Discover that helps you aggregate all of your streaming services that you subscribe to, create watch lists, and then be able to kind of launch and deep link into those services and be able to see everything. So when you have that question of where is one of those shows playing and you don't know if it's Apple TV, Hulu, Netflix, or wherever, you can come to Plex, you can search, and you can find it and launch into it. Also other free streaming services as well, and whatever we have on our platform that happens to be available for on-demand streaming or fast. So from that perspective, we're trying to kind of close the gap of where you go to be able to find out where things are rather than just Google. So a place that you can actually personalize your experience, personalize your watch list, and start have a starting point, if that makes sense. But additionally, we're also looking to make some updates to our platform that speak to kind of the human interaction aspect of the streaming experience. So there are so many opportunities, and there's not a ton of places where people are having in-depth conversations with like-minded individuals that are interested in the same type of content they are, and or their friends, peers, or family. So we're trying to incorporate some new features that help facilitate those interactions and those conversations and those recommendations on the platform.
So can I add to that as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's some really interesting stuff that I've thought about lately in terms of content discovery. So knowing where something is playing is great, but what about what should I watch next, right? Sort of content recommendation. I really think that Chat GPT is going to be something that we're going to see as maybe the solution for what content should I watch? Because I can ask it, hey, you know what? I'm feeling really down. Can you recommend some content? If it is connected to a source of data, perhaps my behavioral data, now I can actually get a recommendation based on the things I've watched. And of course, we can do cohort analysis in the background. So things that other people have watched that are like me, and suddenly Chat GPT comes back with some real world suggestions. Oh, I'm so sorry that you're feeling down. Hey, you should really try to watch this. Here's where it's located. And not only that, but you look at companies like Vion Labs, who they're an SVTA grant member company. They're doing sentiment analysis on frames of movies. So they have this huge metadata database about sentiments within specific movies so that they can classify things as like really scary or just kind of scary. And so if you link that kind of stuff to Chat GPT, you get this really cool way to recommend content to people that is very human, even though it's AI, but it's a much more human perspective than just using data to say like, hey, 10 people that were like you watch this, you probably would like this too. I just thought that was fun. I'm a huge Plex fan. Yay, Plex.
No, that's awesome. That's super interesting. And I feel like being able to like tie into what people have on their watch list with something like that would even be kind of like the next step, how we could think about that and do that. I love that idea. And we've been talking, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, Danny, that some of the things you're talking about is still leveraging data, but it's using maybe other information from other people that are relatable to another user and crossing that data to come up with something new. Is that how it works? Or
a little bit, yeah. And it's the features that we're coming out with are really more about like your ratings and reviews and things that you think about the content that you're watching. So it creates a little bit more of the recommendations based on personal preference. So I think it's a little bit less driven from machine learning and AI, kind of like we're talking about with GPT, but with more the human, actually, your like personal individual recommendations and thoughts and, watch lists of what you're going to be watching. So
yeah. Stacey, maybe you can, sorry, Danny, I thought you were done there. Stacey, maybe do you want to comment here on this idea of, discovery and the volume of content and how consumers are navigating what's coming in the future to really support that discovery process?
Yeah, I think young consumers have a very expansive idea of what television is, and so they have really robust appetites for a plethora of types of content. I think the most important thing for this generation who grew up with a mobile device in their hands is choice, accessibility, and length. I think we're seeing young consumers really playing with their desire for short form content. There is a massive rise of short form content. So I think the appetite among young consumers is really widespread. And so I think that we're going to see a lot of focus on that choice, as you mentioned, which is why that discovery is going to be so important for accessing that content.
And the short form content that's really everywhere on YouTube and other online sort of original online sites is very compelling for those younger viewers, and also extends into these other content areas like sports, which I want to get back onto. But we saw Quibi come out and kind of fail very quickly, and then Roku, I think, getting the rights to what they did do. Did they just not understand how this was going to work? What do you think maybe went wrong there? And are there other providers who are really working on short form where it is working very well? And Stacey, you may have comments on this with some of your, the groups that you work with.
Yeah, I would say YouTube right now, they are going to monetize short form content next month. So I think there's going to be a lot of action there. And I think they're doing a good job of, look, with people watching television on YouTube, there's definitive opportunity for short form, mid form to merge together. And I think for a organization to really be targeting young consumers appropriately, you need to be sort of hitting all of the beats, inclusive of all of those formats. So I think we should definitely be watching YouTube and some of those folks who have an understanding of sort of the value of both the short form and the more mid form, and sort of how you garner eyeballs and audience.
Yeah, and getting back to the sports content, where there's a lot of activity, and there's also a lot of opportunities there with shouldering content, as well as the hub and spoke kind of idea of content with a main piece of content, and then you've got all these offshoots of ways that people may be able to engage further depending on what they want to watch. So Bart or do you have any comments here on all the content that's coming and how that gets integrated off of a core piece of content? Sports is a great example if you want to talk through some of that, which you mentioned briefly earlier.
Yeah, exactly. So I like your term shouldering. That's a great way to describe it. I don't know if I've heard that before, but do you know the nice thing about shouldering content is, frankly, to generate the content, it's a lot lower cost. I mean, look, for example, at the Manning cast that's put out. To that whole thing is quite entertaining. It goes after the Gen Z, or maybe even the Gen Alpha, the next generation after that. And so a totally different demographic, and the cost to put it on is very, very low because it's a repurpose of the Monday Night Football. So I think that is something that you're going to see more with sports. In addition to like the Nickelodeon, type of Monday Night Football stuff. And then, all joking aside about pickleball, maybe pickleball is the other end of the demographics, but we're also going to be able to go after, targeted markets like that. So I think sports is a great application for the streaming, and we're just going to see more and more of it. It's a great model.
Yeah, lots coming there. Also, a lot to talk about as it relates to advertising and advertising formats. I do want to remind the audience, though, that we have a couple of polls. So if you would fill out the polls, and if you have any questions, we are taking questions. But Jason, maybe we can have you comment on advertising, and then Bart, maybe back to you on the contextual advertising and how the advertising industry is also changing and having to rely on new data and new information to base their decisions on. Very, very complicated to understand all that's going on there. So, Jason, comments?
Yeah, there is a lot especially from a technology perspective. As a matter of fact, there are, in a sense, some competing approaches, right? There's addressable advertising, programmatic advertising, there's server-side advertising, insertion, dynamic client-side ad insertion. There are just so many pieces to the ad technology stack. It is, again, unlike broadcast, where you used to just slot in like a Black Arrow or a Tandberg box, and boom, you had all of your advertising taken care of. Now you've got multiple specs and standards to ensure, like for sports, that blackouts are, that they're addressed for streaming audiences. So there's just so much going on in terms of, the technology for advertising, and it can be very confusing. But what we are definitely seeing is a rapid move in the industry to try and get some interoperability and consolidation around these approaches. I mean, the IAB Tech Lab with their VAST standard, that's a really hard push. Obviously, Comcast, especially in Sky, are doing some amazing things with making ads contextual to even people in different rooms in the same house. So, again, much like what we're seeing with the traditional streaming market, is the technology is leading the charge. So it's all there in some way. It's just a matter of piecing it together in a scalable fashion, that makes sense for advertisers and brand owners, to be able to ensure that they're getting the right data and the right ad to the right person.
Yeah, absolutely. Bart, you want to add any comments there?
Yeah, I would say contextual targeted advertising, like Jason talked about, on browsers has been happening for 5 years or so. And now about 60% of online, ads that you would see, if you're surfing the internet, are contextual based. And all of this is coming to video. And that ecosystem is what Jason's talked about, is being sorted out now. And with text, it's, relatively straightforward. You can pick out some keywords and then, serve an ad against it. But with video, the amount of information you have is a lot more. And sometimes, maybe the title of the video or whatever is not, doesn't indicate what is happening in the video. So really, the only way you can do this with video is using some advanced technology like artificial intelligence, and using like a video AI product that can analyze the video in a fast way, generate the metadata, and says, hey, this is a great place to place a sneaker ad because in this particular, right before this video pod, there was a big running scene in a movie and they were running with a particular brand of sneakers. So, gee, if you happen to have that brand as an ad, this is a great place to place it. And by the way, this particular person loves to run. And so all that stuff is happening. And with the VAST standards and the IBM, it's coming together, and in the IP domain, which you can do. So I think, if we talk about, trends, I think contextual targeted advertising is happening. It's in the early stages, but there is so much money there that advertisers and brands are going to be targeting in on this very, very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And this advertising opportunity exists in all sorts of different areas with content. Certainly, even when you're looking at the sports, the role of content in sports, there's so much there, especially when you, as you said earlier, Bart, or Jason, whoever said it, about just the fandom type of energy that comes with watching sports. So, Stacy, did you have any other comments you might want to make in regards to sports content and the role of that type of content as it moves into the streaming world?
Sure. Look, I think social provides a really beautiful opportunity to further engage fandom, especially with sports. And there's massive opportunity because there's not a ton out there right at this time. So what we do at Whistle, which is really exciting, is we're creating original titles that are at the intersection of sports and culture. And so it provides an opportunity for these athletes to engage their fan base on a more intimate level and get to introduce them as they are off the court, off the field. Who are they? What is their family dynamic like? What is their life like? And I think we're seeing young audiences, the next generation is even more so interested in sort of that aspect of sports rather than just watching highlights or watching the game itself. They want quick hits and they want to get to know people. So they want relatability. So I think this direct to consumer experience with sports is going to lend itself really well to all sorts of ways to sort of engage that consumer on a more intimate level. And I think that's a missed opportunity if you're not doing that. I think the people who really are making sure that their relationship with consumers is on an evergreen basis and constantly reinforced, I think that's going to be really paramount.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this role of personalization and all the data behind each viewer is really interesting because the market is just so fragmented in terms of how consumers are getting to that content. So, Danny, I wanted to come back to you and just talk about, why it's so important to solve this fragmentation and that role that discovery ends up playing in terms of how a consumer, gets to specific content. And I think in your role, you have a great position with the product side as well as the marketing side that you could maybe speak to this a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. I think to jump back onto what Stacy was saying about bringing some of that personal interactivity from athletes, that's also something we've been thinking a lot about of how to bring that onto the platform. So director level commentary or particular talent coming in and telling us what they're interested in. So not just, here are their top, here are the top movies that so-and-so's in, but here's what's actually exciting for them right now. And this is what they're watching. This is what they recommend. So bring that kind of human element like we were talking about earlier and get people excited about things that way in our platform. But as far as this, solving the industry fragmentation piece is really kind of what I said earlier is what we want is to be able to cut down those decisions. We've done studies that says it can take anywhere from 30 to 40 minutes for people to find something to watch across 4 different services. And that just cuts in the time of people wanting to spend the time to figure it out, right? And we want to be part of the solution that makes it easier for people to find what they want to watch and makes it faster. So where is all the content living? Where are their recommendations? What are people saying? What are people that they're interested in saying? And how can we help them kind of move towards finding something to watch down the line a little bit faster? I think for us, that's where the solving fragmentation part is. It's more about getting you to what you wanted to watch. And I was at Tubi for 3 or 4 years, and that was always a huge conversation around machine learning versus indicators from the actual person of what they were interested in seeing. And so I think that's going to continue to be a problem once you actually get someone on your platform, is getting them into watching something and, you know, starting to monetize off of them, frankly, from our perspective.
Sure, absolutely. We do have a question from the audience, so let me go ahead and ask this real quick. For sports content and interactivity related to betting and wagering, will the industry be able to address latency and delays, or are you seeing improvements that are solving for this? So I don't know, Jason or Bart, maybe Jason's looks like he wants to answer. Bart may have some comments too on this one.
I've gotten this question so many times. Yeah. So, obviously WebRTC and the push for WebRTC is ultra low latency streaming. It's designed for betting situations. What we're seeing some of our, sports platforms operators do is have a bifurcated workflow. So WebRTC does not scale that well. So it's really not intended to reach millions of concurrent people at the same time. And so what we're seeing them do is they're having one version of the stream that is the sporting event delivered to people who are not betting. And that is just a normal, like an HLS or a dash or a segmented stream. There is some latency there. It's not a big deal. But for those folks who are actively betting or have indicated that they're going to be betting, they get delivered the WebRTC stream. And so they get a near real time, ultra low latency, sub 1 second, so that the bets that they place, there's no delay, which would cause issues with that betting. So yes, we are seeing the industry respond to the need for ultra low latency, at the same time understanding that it has to be done in a scalable fashion.
Okay, great. Bart, did you want to add anything to that?
Well said. I think, the technology is solvable more or less. And then I think you also have commercial issues about taxes and betting and legislation stuff, which the streamers are still sorting out a little bit. So I don't know, a year ago, 2 years ago, we thought it was going to be massive. I think it's going to be nice, but not as big maybe as we thought.
I agree with that. It's very, very slow growth with that right now.
Yeah, a lot there also that has to get integrated and really work out in the end to make that fair and really work.
I think a note to that is we're going to probably see more betting in arena. So people who are watching the game or the match are in the arena, which could probably be deployed with 5G ultra wideband. You're talking it's a near instant real time experience. I think that's where we're going to see betting really take off for streaming sports events, not necessarily in the home for a while.
Okay, great. Danny or Stacy, did either of you want to comment on sports betting or technologies there at all?
No, all I would say is, look, it's another fan engagement tool. I think all of these ways of connecting the consumer to the sport and how they can be engaging and feel more connected to it. I think this is going to be important in 2023 in those legs. And again, as I said, that sort of evergreen approach to constantly reaching out and talking and having this relationship with consumers. So I just see it as another great tool to do that.
Yeah, I didn't have a comment so much on the betting, but I kind of had a question around what everyone thinks about larger companies, like media conglomerates, like Fox buying Tubi and, Viacom with Pluto, and how they're going to use those free ad-supported streaming services for sports. Because, Tubi did that with the World Cup and had games after the fact. And I'm just curious with these sports minds, how they see that affecting the industry. I know, Elizabeth, that wasn't a question.
Yeah, that's a great question. I love it if you want to.
Because I really feel like there were certain things about that experience personally I found interesting, and I know some folks at Tubi that are still working on that, and just want to see what the sports minds thought.
I mean, you know, I'll speak.
Hi, so I'm back. I think we just dropped off, had a little technical glitch there. But our internet. So let's see if we can get everybody joined back in. And let's see. So, Bart, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay,
Sounds
great.
loud and clear.
Great. We'll just give it a minute. I think we lost some connection there. So we're just going to see if we can get people back on. Bart, while we've got you, maybe you can talk a little bit here about some of the integration requirements. You know, we're talking about this transformation from the traditional way to the streaming. And so what are some of the things that, you know, the requirements that you're seeing that have to happen?
Yeah, so I think Jason mentioned it earlier, but ecosystem complexities are high. And that's why it's super important to whatever system architecture network you build out. You have to always put your service in someone that can handle it, and I would say safe hands that understands all the complexities. In fact, I'll even give Jason a plug to say that his organization is an important organization to kind of help stitch all these people and players together to make sure the signals flow efficiently and effectively. So a little plug for you, Jason, and your group.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Yes, it's all about interoperability. So
yeah.
Well, yeah, and you know, we've got another question that came in from the audience around consolidation. And in this last 5 or 8 minutes, I really want to talk about the future of streaming. And I think, based on what we're seeing, that a lot's going to be happening in 2023 around consolidation, bundles, new bundles that are entering the market, and really new partnerships maybe we've never seen before. So some of this relates to, you know, how the video and cable industry is catching up or catching on to how the streaming industry works. And so, Stacey, I want to maybe go to you on this next question of, you know, consolidation as well as the view of the streaming market and where the cable traditional providers are maybe in their mindset and how you view that.
So I think, again, I think the relationship consumers have with streaming is for the accessibility. And I think in terms of next steps, what's on the horizon, what's really interesting is I think coming out of CES, we saw like Roku and Apple coming together to create a connected TV offering. I think 2023 is the year in which the streamers have to make it an easier experience for consumers to reach. And so I think that bundling and then that creating of the new tech to sort of make a more seamless experience that's easier, I think that's sort of what's on the horizon.
And I want to agree with Stacey. I think that's exactly right. And what we're seeing is, I mean, prior to what Stacey just described, is everyone's a walled garden, right? It's Disney segmented from Netflix, segmented from Peacock, segmented from Amazon. And I think that bothers people because, again, it's the issue of where can I find stuff? And we're seeing like Plex, great feature, bring all your streaming services together. We can tell you where these things are. but it's still, unless there's single sign on, I've got to go sign into this. Oh, am I not signed into that app? Whoops, I changed my password. It's a mess. And so the bundling may not be from a business model perspective, because I think bundling is a reason that, like, folks like myself, like the Gen Xers who drove a lot of the cutting the cord, left cable, right? I don't want all that stuff. I don't need it. I don't watch it. I want to choose what I want. So the idea of going back to the bundle seems antithesis to that. Really, it's like, going to go and force me to get stuff I don't want again. But I think the bundling will happen based on partnerships and mutual benefit. So Roku and Apple coming together, Amazon, Apple, Roku coming together, folks coming together to provide a single way to access a lot of content. Look what Movies Anywhere did with the way that digitals are stored, right? You can connect all these accounts. You buy a movie, Movies Anywhere, or you buy it on Amazon. If your account's linked, it spreads out to all your different libraries, right? So you own that video, you bought it on Amazon, but you're also a Disney Plus subscriber. So you go into Disney Plus, oh, there's my app. Wow, there's my movie. Or, so that kind of bundling is definitely going to happen in 2023, because consumers need a better way to see and get access to everything that, that they're purchasing and that they're subscribing to. Sorry, just wanted to add that.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly there is a reason why we have the cable bundle, that is what drives a lot of stickiness with the video viewer. And we certainly have a lot of NPS scores over decades that show the power of the bundle, whether we're talking about streaming, cable, home security services, or, broadband value-added services, things like a willingness to pay for parental controls with your broadband or managed Wi-Fi services. So this incremental revenue that can get attached to a core service is, it's the RMR, it's the recurring monthly revenue, and that's ultimately what everybody's after, along with the longer subscriber times. And without those contracts with cable, it is a different environment because of the churn factor and the ease in and out of these platforms. So maybe we can end with a final thought from each of you on one or two things that you think will be different in 1 year from now. So that'll be our last comment from each of you for this session. And I'd like to go ahead and start with Danny, if that's okay, and then we'll go to Stacy, Jason, and Bart.
Sure. I feel like a lot of this is going to be pretty redundant, but that's okay. Because I think the big thing that is going to be different is what we're talking about. This fragmentation is just going to get worse, and the necessity to have new offerings that increase the ease of use for the consumer, I think are going to come to fruition. And that's going to be kind of the main thing that is going to be different in a year. And I also, from the conversations we're having, it's just the access and ability to get live sports outside of your cable bundle is going to become a bigger offering, because I think that's really what people and consumers want.
Okay, great. Stacy? Oh, you're on mute.
So sorry,
No problem.
Look, I think we hit on a lot of the things that I think are coming in 2023, but I would say that what I see as being the most interesting for 2023 is the shifting focus from streaming to elsewhere and sort of the legs of how that supports that. So we talk about the blockchains, we talk about betting, we talk about social, all of these aspects that sort of support the D2C experience. I think we're going to see, to Jason's point, a lot of people playing with that and seeing how playing with the ecosystem to find like that perfect balance of all the merging.
Absolutely. Lots of experimentation. Okay, Jason?
I'm going to be the naysayer. Nothing's going to be different. So I think that's a little bit of the problem, is that we get caught into hype cycles. And so the real change takes, behavioral change takes years, 4, 5, 7, 8, 10 years to really integrate into the way that people do things. When you ask somebody to do something differently, the first thing you're going to say is cost benefit analysis. Like, oh, do I have time for this? I'm really busy. Like, that sounds really cool. Like that immersive experience. I'm going to try that with my Oculus when I get a chance. Oh, that chance is oh my gosh, it's 4 months later. I should really try that. People are just busy. And so we're going to continue to see really great technology improvements and new ways that are going to come out to do streaming experience and video experiences and all these different modalities, HMDs, mobile, PC, connected TV. But ultimately, a year from now, things are going to be pretty much the same.
Okay, great comments there, Jason. Bart?
Okay, I'm going to mix it up a little bit too. I think contextual advertising will take 3 years or so to hit big, so that will be a while. But somebody mentioned it earlier. I think short form videos, which certainly aren't new, but the demand has exploded with the popularity of the likes of TikTok and others, and bigger OTT platforms have taken notice. Like even Netflix introduced their short form, what they call fast laughs feature in their app in 2022. So I bet you a lot of the big platforms will have some sort of quick hit short form features, but we'll see.
Okay, well, really a lot to talk about here. I want to thank you all for your time. The things you mentioned, the direct-to-consumer, experimentation going on, the ease of use, the role of content, certainly with a focus on sports, short form, and then really this generational thing and the change. And so maybe these 10-year-olds and 13-year-olds who in 10 years will be in their 20s and in 20 years will be in their 30s is really how far we might be for a full streaming experience. But great comments. I very much appreciate your time and support of our Future of Video events. And so thank you again for joining us today.
Thanks. It's great.
Thanks so much.
Bye, everybody.
Great. So we will be right back in just a minute for our Visionary Spotlight. So hang with us and thanks for joining. What a fantastic first panel for our Future of Video virtual session today. Hi, I'm Jennifer Kent, Vice President of Research with Parks Associates. I'm so pleased to be introducing our visionary spotlight speaker today, Serhad Doken. Serhad is the CTO of Audio, and he is responsible for the technology roadmap, research strategy, and advanced R&D products there. Serhad's been innovating his whole career. We're going to hear about some of that innovation today with R&D strategy and innovation roles at Verizon, Qualcomm, Cisco, and among others. Serhad's going to be sharing some of his perspective on what's on the cutting edge of entertainment and entertainment tech. So Serhad, welcome. Serhad, can you hear me? I think you're muted if you can unmute yourself. Serhad, I think you need to unmute yourself. I think you're muted right now.
All right. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Fantastic. I can. Hello and welcome.
Hello. Hello. Very nice to be here. Sorry for the snafu. Are you able to see the slides? Okay, great.
We sure can.
Very happy to be here. Yes. Let me give you a very short introduction about the company Adia. So we have been in the business for 30 years, 30 plus years, but we're also 3 months old because we we listed on NASDAQ about 3 months ago. So we're a 1.2 billion company, but if you look at our history, it goes back to 3 decades with a multitude of acquisitions. And in October, we separated from Xperi, spinned off Xperi, and now we're an independent company. We're focused on the full content pipeline, and everything that we work on is about creating an edge. That's our focus: creating sustainable edge through pure innovation. So for today, what I wanted to touch was, based on the previous sessions we had, let's go back to almost square one and think about the evolution of the user interfaces, because at the end of the day, all the applications depend on the user interfaces. Consumers look at the experience from the interface that they're going through, whether that's a communication experience, media content experience, or the user interfaces have impact to computing paradigms as well. So, I mean, all the way to late 80s or early 80s, mainframes, you used to put a paper to be able to communicate through the mainframe. Then we moved on to a desktop PC experience. It was mostly mouse and keyboard experience, and to the TV, it is primarily through a remote. Then in 2010s, we moved on to smartphone and tablet experience. Touch screen came on, right? So that gave us many, many different experiences, different applications that were not possible. Today, I don't know of a lot of people calling an Uber from their desktop on a smartphone. You just invoke the application, and thanks to the GPS, that's a new service that came about. Then about 2015, we moved on to wearables. I mean, very good example is the watch, but also voice interface came along. Now we are able to control our TV or a digital assistant through a voice experience, and the underlying technology about that is natural language processing. And what now we're moving into is the next user interface, which is the vision interface. And Jennifer, we recently put out a white paper. I refer folks in our audience to that white paper. There's great work there through collaboration with Parks and Adia. And the underlying technology under that is camera. We're now everywhere we go, there are cameras on your phone, on your PC, on your tablet, security surveillance cameras, in your car dash cam, and we're going to see the price point coming down, and then cameras proliferating even more than what they have been able to do today. So what that means is every time a new user interface comes in, there is an impact to what kind of media services that you can actually launch. And one point, critical point, is when a new user interface comes in, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to replace the previous one. For instance, when the touchscreen was launched on the smartphones, we didn't have touchscreen on the PCs, but today on a Surface tablet or many other let's call it tablets, or PCs, you're able to use the touchscreen. I mean, if you go all the way to early 90s, OCR, like you would scan a paper and then you would get everything. Then we, in the advertising world, we started with the cookies, profiling. We had recommendations on the DVR. Then we launched closed captioning, personalized search, subtitling, dubbing. Then when we had the touchscreen, then we were able to do pinch zoom. On the smartphone, swipe up, down, left, right. Now we're bringing that kind of experience on the TVs as well. When you move on to the voice interface, then advanced voice recognition, real-time translation, doing search via voice, and fingerprinting, building that into second screen applications. That enabled us to launch smart home services, creating automated tasks, creating recipes for if then and else kind of services, and then building knowledge graph around the user, around the devices that are in the home. These are all new services that came about. Now, coming back to today, we have much more media-focused services such as lenses, filters. Video shopping is getting off the ground. Now we're able to use avatars, for instance, conferences like this, being able to control devices through gestures. Massive multiplayer online games have really proliferated. And it's not a big service right now, but I think betting, wagering is also gaining momentum. And while you're doing that, obviously you're doing a lot of video analytics, creating metadata real time. So with all these new interfaces and new media services, just the definition of media consumption is changing, and then the revenue mix is also shifting, right? In the good old days, like 1990, the assumption is you're at home, sitting on the couch, and watching TV. So it was a more of a one-on-one relationship. The broadcast network or the cable network is packaging the content. Hey, here are our channels, and then you subscribe to that, and then the content is flowing through a set-top box. Now, in the 2010s, then we had the internet delivered streaming content, right? Smartphones became pervasive. You got YouTube. You were able to access user-generated content, so it's an untethered experience. Mobile is the screen of choice. So there was some upstream content. Live streaming was starting, but it was mostly a downstream experience. Now, in 2020, what happened is a pandemic, and a lot of us were used to using video conferencing, but it was more of a business setting. Now everybody started working from home, and video conferencing has become more of a de facto way of work. So if you extrapolate from that, going forward 5 years, 10 years, let's say towards 2030s, what we think is going to happen is there's going to be so much content. I mean, we're kind of already there. If I'm interested in Thai cooking, there's a channel about that on YouTube. If I'm interested in learning Taekwondo, okay, there's video content about that. So the impact of user-generated content is actually increasing. And now anybody can be a creator. So now we have to think about N by N matrix of content that's going to be available in a variety of devices, right? It doesn't have to be always the PC or the TV. It can be the tablet. I can actually take content from one device and cast it to another device. people are playing games, people are actually watching other people playing games. I can have a social audio experience through Clubhouse or Twitter Spaces. I can chat while a live stream is going on. So going forward, all these experiences are going to be more interactive, more live streaming. The virtual and the social experience is going to mix, and gaming is going to take hold, not only from a interactive perspective, but the media experience is going to be more gamified, and there will be more upstream traffic as much as there is downstream traffic. And Jennifer, recently also, I don't know if it's out there, we worked on a white paper focused on interactive video services. So I think we go into great detail into what are the new services that will be coming. So now let's go back to the Val. In order to power future experiences, we need to get a lot of things done, right, underneath the surface. So what are those main three things? One is we need to have more bandwidth, right? Um, just to have a good experience, the more bandwidth, the better. And orthogonal to that is latency. In order to have an interactive, real-time, live experience with feedback, then you need to have very low latency. But on top of that, the new experiences that are coming in is going to require more compute complexity. So having more than 30, 50 megabit per second bandwidth and having something like 10 millisecond latency is great, but then that's going to mean high bandwidth video, which requires low latency, but there's going to be a lot of computation, a lot of rendering that needs to happen, meaning then we need more and more computer power. I mean, we moved from the days of single CPU to multi-core CPU. GPUs came along. Well, they're not that cheap, so you can slice a GPU virtually, but then also using multi-core GPUs will enable us to launch future services. So let's take a look at like what those services are. So we're already here, meaning standard streaming, high definition streaming, video conferencing, live stream, those are already happened. So what's coming down the line? If you look forward 5 to 10 years, it's multiplayer gaming, interactive cloud gaming, massive multi-user virtual interaction, new services powered by computer vision, vision-based interfaces such as augmented reality, social VR experiences, volumetric video, and then what I would call the holy grail, like light-field video and light-field displays. What that means is almost like the Star Wars holodeck experience. You look at the screen, and then you're almost like you're stepping into that as if it was the real life. So that's a long-term vision, but there are examples, showcases of what's coming down. There has been a lot of immersive content, through live events during the pandemic times, such as sports events, music conferences, virtual presence experiences. They were sort of like tied to a smartphone experience, but we're seeing more variable, tethered, or untethered future services that's going to take us beyond the showcases and then eventually them being pervasively deployed services. So I mentioned a lot of services there, but so we don't have time to cover everything today. What I wanted to focus on is one example of that, not necessarily prioritized in terms of importance, but I wanted to just highlight one. One is volumetric video, and you're going to say, what is that? Volumetric video means shooting a scene from multiple angles and reproducing it in a three-dimensional environment that the viewer can move freely. A very basic example is, let's say you're watching a game. I'm a big soccer fan. Let's say I'm watching the France and Argentina World Cup final game. I like to be able to like walk around the screen and then see the game from the perspective of that player, right? One would say, well, how is that different than 360? The difference is in a 360 video, you're kind of like looking around to see what's around you. With the volumetric video, it's just the opposite. You're kind of looking from outside in. So if I wanted to take the seat that is facing the goalkeeper, while there is a goal scoring opportunity, volumetric video is going to enable me to do that. Or if I wanted to see the video or action from the person, from the scorer's perspective, volumetric video is also going to enable me to do that. So it's almost like you can sell me a ticket. You can sell me like 7 tickets during the game. Or if I wanted to jump from one vantage point to another vantage point, that's possible. You can switch from 2D to 3D seamlessly. And it's applicable both for live action and CGI. So what's under the hood, right? That seems pretty complex, and I'm not going to scare the children and go too much into technology. But from a capture perspective, there are multiple approaches using a projector and a camera, 2 cameras, right camera, left camera, passive stereo, active stereo, or using a laser source like a LiDAR. All of these approaches have pros and cons in technology. Everything is a trade-off, whether you're going to be able to get high resolution one versus other, or occlusion, how are you going to solve the occlusion? Those things are challenging. And also being able to get that depth effect by measuring the multipath effect. Once you've done the capture, what you need to do is use different mathematical ways to construct that video, right? Create a polyhedral object based on the capture variables you have. Now, how many cameras you use, what's the distribution, resolution of those cameras, what was the frame rate, audio capability, whether you used lighting, integrated lighting, separate lighting, get the audio from 3D beamforming aspects so you can exactly hear where that sound came from. Once you've done that, then you have to process and compute that video in an editor. Let's say you're using Unity, and then you can pump up your visual effects, and you have to be backward compatible. Obviously, you have to put that video into formats that are already being used to be backward compatible into MP4 format, etc., and then get it to distribution. So as I mentioned, there's going to be a lot of computing necessary, which is why I covered in the earlier slide the need for bandwidth, latency, as well as the compute, because while you're processing that 3D point cloud video, you have to do a lot of vertex processing, look at the edges, reduce fragmentation, stitch fragments as necessary, normalize the coordinated spaces. We're talking about like 2 terabytes a minute of data, and get that under gigabyte or less. And there has been a lot of showcases, such as I think NBA offered a volumetric basketball game. I was involved in a virtual concert with Madison Beer. That's a project I worked with Sony, capturing the artist in the studio, so you can feel like as if you are in the studio and as if you're standing next to that artist. Now, I wanted to close with the next user interface, as I see as a paradigm shift. That's XR, and XR stands for extended reality. That's a point of augmented reality meets virtual reality. Augmented reality is you're putting virtual objects in a physical world, and virtual reality is you're in a virtual world, and you can have both physical and virtual objects. And XR is where the point that's mixing. I see this is going to be a point where you're going to be able to like toggle between them back and forth with a press of a button. And this is not too far away. I mean, you're looking at a reference design from Snapdragon. It's going to be a variable similar to Watch, when it came into market in 2015. It took about like 5 years for it to be really ubiquitous. This is going to be the same thing. It's a paradigm shift. It's going from 2D to 3D. And when you look at that device, right, it's almost like looking like it's a special forces device. It's got cameras looking out, doing hand tracking the objects in the real world. It's got cameras facing in, so it can like track your eyeballs, so you can actually select objects with your eyes, just like you touch your finger on a touch screen. Select, move those things, pinch, zoom. Directional speakers, ultra bright LED lights, ambient light sensors, multi-mode connectivity, transducer, bone conducting transducers, so you can actually hear the audio pretty well, and then even like a rear-facing camera. So you're probably thinking like, what's the application for that? It's going to be like three main applications. First one is entertainment. The basic example is this is almost using an infinite size display, right? I'd like to watch the France and Argentina final game. Give me a 120-inch screen. So I'm actually wearing the screen, so I can go anywhere with that screen. Maybe I'll be able to also see the PC screen that I have in front of me. Entertainment is going to be that immersive, almost like a personal theater experience where you can get immersive audio in your ears. You're going to feel like you don't need to go to the theater. You can actually wear the theater on your face. Having said that, that's not easy. There are a lot of technical problems to solve that. First of all, making content for that device, right? Just like you don't make the same web page on a smartphone as you do on the desktop. You need to have a special content for this. You need to solve the weight issue. The eye box has to be wide enough. Field of view has to be wide enough. The heating issues have to be solved. Let's assume that we solve all that problems, which is why we covered that slide. Like, here are the three main parameters that I need. There will be a computing unit that the consumers will be wearing. Second major application is going to be communication. Your FaceTime call, you can have it on this device. And finally, gaming is going to be a significant applications for this. So this may sound like years away, but what I can tell you is based on all the signs that we're seeing in the market, the work that we're doing, and we're seeing others doing the work, it is pretty soon that it's going to be launched. And obviously, when it gets launched, it takes a while for the consumers to get used to new user interfaces. Another major impact is going to be for advertising, because now the physical world is going to be your interface. You're not limited to a particular screen to offer advertising. The ads can appear anywhere in front, on top of a building, on your kitchen table. Any surface pretty much becomes an advertising space, and through eye tracking, you're going to be able to actually measure the impact of that ads that you're showing to the user. With that, I'll pause for questions and other thoughts.
Serhat, thank you so much for that really future-looking presentation. And in fact, you're making a great point that it might seem like it's far in the future, but all of this technology is ready and being developed and in many ways being used now. We are just about out of time, but I did want to ask you, one quick question here. I think that when you think about the content owners and the service providers creating immersive, personalized experiences that are making use of some of the technology that's available today, we see a lot of that maybe coming to mobile platforms, content owners that are used to very personalized device, a personalized screen with interactive elements because you have a great input there. But maybe the traditional content owners and service providers to the TV screen are a little bit behind, right? What would you say when those types of players are thinking about all of these new user interfaces coming down the pipe and what they really need to be thinking about and preparing for in their strategies?
Sure. That's a great question, Jennifer. I mean, every new user interface brings in a new paradigm, and services are going to be impacted. This is no different. We went through the same thing from desktop to mobile. So the content owners, service providers have to think about, like, with a new lens, what's possible with this technology, and how can we support multiple UIs with the same experience, whatever platform or device or interface that people are on. And also, we have to be mindful how the media is consumed by the consumers on each device, platform, and content time. So, like, new generation, my generation grew up with cable and YouTube. Now the new generation are spending their time on social and gaming, as well as other sorts of online videos. So, focusing on contextual ads, meeting the user in terms of the platform that they're in, whether that's an immersive experience platform, and understanding the big picture of how the totality of the ad impressions are presented, how they're tracked in a holistic fashion. I think that's what's important.
Yeah, fantastic. And just a little bit of Parks Associates data that I think Elizabeth presented earlier. If you weren't able to come in that early, the last time we asked consumers how much time they spend watching video on different devices in the 30 days prior to our survey, fewer than half of 18 to 24-year-olds said they watched any video at all on a TV. So they're already moving to video consumption in different platforms. So Sarhad, thank you so much for your time and your insights today. He did mention that Parks Associates and ADIA published a white paper recently together. So we have in the deck, which you're able to download if you're attending this event, and also here on the screen, a QR code to download and read that white paper on vision-based technology, next-gen control. Sarhad, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Jennifer. Enjoyed it.
And give us just a minute, and we'll be back with our next panel that's discussing maximizing distribution, aggregation, and bundles.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for attending our Future of Video event, and welcome to Maximizing Distribution, Aggregation, and Bundles. In this panel, we'll be looking at how bringing services together can help create value for customers, as well as provide opportunities for providers. My name is Ross Rubin. I'm a contributing analyst at Parks Associates and founder and principal analyst at Reticle Research, which I founded a decade ago. So why don't we start by looking at some Parks research into OTT bundles. What we find is that cost and convenience are two of the main reasons why consumers are attracted to these OTT bundles. We find, for example, that almost 60% of consumers say that they prefer OTT bundles because they provide one bill and one account for all subscriptions. And almost half say that they believe that their ISP or TV provider offers a value by providing OTT video services. And about 2 in 5 say that they even look to their ISP or TV provider to recommend OTT services. And if we drill down a little bit into other reasons why consumers say they look to their home broadband provider to bundle services, what we find as we look on is that there are many ways to manifest cost and convenience advantages to the consumer through bundling. For example, we can see the power of service providers to drive trial, with a third of those who provided reasons for getting services through their home service provider, saying that they signed up for a new video service because it was offered as part of a promotional offer. We find that about a quarter say that they like the idea of managing multiple services in one place, and 18% saying that having access to these online services has lowered their home service bundle cost. So with that, we're going to move on and introduce our panelists for today. The first person I'd like to introduce is Scott Ehrlich, Chief Innovation Officer at Sinclair Broadcast Group. Scott?
Oh, take off mute. Good morning. I don't have like a huge intro. We're a pretty straightforward company. We own television stations. We own some over-the-air networks, a couple of OTT services, and my role is really focused on growth and looking forward. But I also oversee our startup business group, which includes our OTT services.
Thanks, Scott. Our next CEO of Digi.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here. Jim Long. I'm CEO of Digi. We have a couple of products. The biggest one is called Local BTV, and it's all about adding streaming to local television. So just like cable people can use their cable or satellite box to watch, they can also do streaming. We believe the same thing is very much appreciated for over-the-air channels, and we think over-the-air is going to grow, and ATSC3 is going to be a great thing. And I think the aggregation wars, as on this too busy slide, show my biggest point, which is that all this aggregation is going to be great for local television.
Thanks so much, Jim. Our next speaker is David Mole, CEO of PlayPilot.
Hi, everyone. So I'm super excited to be in this panel, but the easiest way to explain what PlayPilot is doing is to actually start off with a question. So don't you agree that it's usually very hard to find high quality content to watch and then also figure out where it's available? So, well, usually the answer to that question is yes. So you end up watching something that's not really something you want to watch. And most people experience this often. So this is what we are solving. We are a streaming guide that gathers all legal content in one single place. We don't actually stream any content. We just focus to solve the content discovery problem. So yeah, that's it.
Thanks, David. And our next speaker is Gautam Vinjamuri, COO of QuickPlay.
Hello, friends. Gautam here. Glad to be part of this panel representing QuickPlay. We are into providing streaming services and streaming platforms for large tier 1 service providers, case in point, AT&T, Rogers, and many others across the globe. Been in the industry for the past 18 plus years as QuickPlay, and we've been doing large-scale transformations and also setting up sports-based OTT services. So glad to participate in this panel to share some of our thoughts around bundling and aggregation.
Thanks so much, Gautam. So I'm very excited that we really have a nice mix of folks in the content business, on the infrastructure side, a really nice mix of perspectives today. So I'd like to start off by asking an industry perspective question on what you are seeing driving bundling and aggregation. We talked a little bit about what consumers are seeing, but I'd love to hear some thoughts on the business perspective. Scott, perhaps we could start with you.
With me?
Yeah, sure.
So, yeah, I think it's consumer experience driven, right? And whether that's, through the lens of how you pay for it, how you manage your subscriptions, or from my perspective, the sort of sharper end of it is discovery, content discovery. The first and biggest problem you discover in a world of infinite choices is you have a world of infinite choices. Good luck figuring out which one you should make. I would point to some of the examples less on the ISP side, right, or even what's traditionally been an MVPD, and more on the OEM side. And take a look at the work that Apple's doing on Apple TV with the TV app and how it integrates all of the other services that you use and subscribe to. I would take a look at what Roku's done with the Roku channel and building more discovery into that and their kind of universal search approach. I would take a look at how Samsung is integrating some of these services into their kind of core offering and whatnot. And then I would also take a look at what Amazon's doing with being able to sort of subscribe to premium channels and have that all flow through a single interface.
Thanks, Scott. Jim, you mentioned the aggregation wars in your opening comments. How much do you see this as kind of just a competitive response that companies need to look into as they see other players in the industry moving toward this?
Well, I think they definitely need to, and I think there are some very strong consumer needs, but I also see it as a potential train wreck because sometimes companies don't think about consumer needs and they think about their own needs. So you have issues like, is this just becoming another walled garden? You have the issues of the Samsung UI versus, say, the Comcast UI or the broadcast and those types of things. And so it looks to me like there's going to be a lot of turbulence. And certainly I agree with Scott, discovery is really the key besides finding what you want, right? People either turn on their TV, either know what they want, they got to get to it, which is confusing, but manageable. Or the TV has its own home screen and Google's telling you what to do and you're wondering what the heck is this all about? Or more importantly, you have a go-to bundle. You want to start with your cable or you want to start with your antenna TV or start with Netflix, right? So making it easy for the consumer. But right now, remember, it used to be the input, right? What input do you want? And lo and behold, when you turned on the TV, you went back to that input. So it was pretty easy. Now it's like every time you turn on the TV, you have to figure out again what the heck you want to do. So I think it's an excellent area and everyone has to play on it. I like software-based solutions because they're the same UI everywhere, not just on your Roku TV. It's going to be on your laptop too, or whatever. But so it's going to be fun to watch. That's for sure.
It's really been fascinating as we've tracked the growth of fast services, particularly over the past year, not just the attractiveness of the cost of those services free to the consumer, but their interfaces are also so reminiscent of the program guides of the past. I wonder if there's also been an element of familiarity there that's really appealed to consumers. David, that seems to be a really good cue to turn to you. What are you seeing in terms of discoverability? I mean, that's really part of the core of what you're doing, and how it translates to navigating these various services as consumers discover more about what they want. David?
Oh, it was me. Okay, I lost you for a second. Sorry. Yeah,
I'm sorry.
exactly. Yeah. That is exactly what we're doing, obviously. And I mean, we've spent, including myself, years of creating fantastic technical solutions. I've been selling them for years, and it works really well now to do, consume content whenever, wherever, on any device. But content discovery is completely broken still. What I would give to this discussion a bit is probably the European angle as well, just so you are aware. But we spend almost 2 years of our lives just searching for content, which is pretty depressing. And another survey shows that we spend 50 minutes a day just browsing through content that we might want to watch. Bundles would also need guides to find content. I'm sure about it. It's absolutely necessary. If not, it's like buying a bundle would be like buying a car without a steering wheel. So also on top of this, I like to mention social already now, because social has been a thing within TV for a long time, but with social in this case, I mean to get recommendations from and advice from people you trust. And on top of the list of, you showed a few excellent graphs in the beginning, but on top of the list of where you really want to get recommendations from, it's not really Netflix or anyone, any company really. It's more friends, family, film critics, influencers, etc. So I believe social recommendations will finally break through because that's going to be so important. So that's just a few aspects of this content discovery piece, which is very close to my heart at least.
Gotham, your company does a lot of work in the sports area, working with service providers there. This was a huge theme at our Future Video event in December in Los Angeles.
Yes.
How does sports fit into the picture, live programming? I'm going to come back to Scott and Jim for their perspective on this too, but this is really appointment viewing, right? So does the need for discovery go away there, or is there more work to do? How does it come into play?
Yeah. See, content discovery and recommendations is going to play a role, or a very important role, across the OTT segments. When I say OTT segments, you have entertainment as one segment and sports as one broad segment, right? So you will have to essentially make sure that the content is reaching the end user in the fastest way possible. For that, whatever is needed to be done in the back end to serve those content pieces to the end users, that your platform has to enable that. So for example, when we are talking about aggregation in the context of sports, okay, there is a different leagues coming in different services, and I as a user would like to switch between different sports or different games at any given point of time. So in that context, if I'm not able to have a single interface that will allow me to search for the content and go across the services, it will be very frustrating, So the discoverability and the universal search aspect that Scott talked about earlier, these all play a pretty important role even in the sports area, our sports segment as well, to bring the content together and watch it seamlessly. So we are working with various third parties as well to bring that content searchability piece together in one single interface. So there are many companies that provide abilities around live to what conversion, what to live conversions and all. So in that, there's lots of metadata that gets generated, and that metadata forms the basis for searching the content, So how can we use that data on a time-to-time basis to do faster recommendations and faster generation of content is something that we are working on. So it's important.
I think you bring up a really interesting point in terms of how streaming is transforming sports viewing in some ways, which is that we're so used to watching our local teams, but as more leagues have made these deals, going way back to Sunday Ticket, right? We've really seen these sports fans who just love seeing the competition from their rival teams, maybe booing them or just checking out other players. Between that dynamic, the point David makes about interactivity and social coming to the screens, and what we heard about volumetric video, looks like we're in for a lot of changes. But Scott and Jim, I want to come back to you for a moment. You're both very active in local programming, broadcast, which tracks back to the time when there really wasn't much competition beyond a few channels. but we're now seeing a number of very interesting aggregation plays that are anchored in local, and then use that as kind of a branching off point for all kinds of services, entertainment services, sports services. So I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on the power of local to drive some of this cross promotion.
Sure. I mean, first thing, a lot of the sports fans aren't necessarily rooting for the competition; they're rooting for their money. So it's a much more tangible thing that they're attached to. And that's fine. That's great. I mean, the rise of sports betting, legal sports betting in America has been tremendous the last couple of years. It's one of the fastest growing categories in and around our industry. But yeah, I think people are often rooting for a specific interest. We'll call it that. You know, in terms of local, listen, there is nothing that will ever replace the relationship between the local community and their local news sources. And the local news sources, you know, more and more have been the television stations with, you know, some of the adversity that's faced the newspaper and the radio industries. The television station become more and more important. And anytime we've done a survey of, you know, sort of local news versus national news, you know, it's very, very consistent. People feel like they have a relationship with their local anchor. They feel like their local news is more independent and more neutral and more, you know, telling them what's going on in their town as opposed to national news, which they see as a little bit more of a entertainment vehicle, you know, talk show vehicle, and a little bit more biased. So, you know, local continues to be important. We have a service called News On that we've had for about 5-6 years. News On has 92% of the markets in America covered with local news, and we see that behavior. We see people going in and looking for their favorite station in their favorite market. Overwhelmingly, it is people actually looking for their local news in the market that they're in. It's you know, I think there's 20-30% of the usage is people looking at out of market stuff. That changes if there's a big news event. So if there's a hurricane hitting Florida or the Gulf Coast, people will come in and look at various stations up and down sort of the affected areas. But for the most part, people go in there and find their own local news, even if they're traveling.
And Jim, coming back to you a little bit, I'd love to hear your perspective, you know, particularly with your thoughts on discovery, how local can bridge to a mix of entertainment content or a mix of live and on-demand offerings. And then if anyone else has thoughts on how effective that is or how important that is for a bundle, please feel free to jump in after.
Yeah. Well, I'd start by saying that local television, be an antenna or your MVPD, you know, it is the original fast channels, right?
Yes.
So the fact of the matter is that it's not surprising at all that Pluto and those guys took off. They're just using the same old paradigm. And the bottom line is we think one key for discovery, besides all the really cool AI stuff and social stuff and all that, is just fast channel change. I mean, seeing what's on. And I think that will, I think as broadcasters figure out a way to get more sports on local TV, and maybe that happens in spades with ATSC3 or whatever, you're going to see people just seeing what's on. The last panel talked about pickleball app. Well, I don't think there's going to be there might be a pickleball app, but there won't be many people using it. But they may stumble upon pickleball channel
But they'll
in
talk
their
about it a lot.
bundle, their guide or whatever, and might even be a hyper local channel where it might be their local high school pickleball tournament or the local high school football game or something like that. So we do see that paradigm, and you know, you can take out all the channels you don't like and slim it down, so it's really easy to just zip through and see what's on. And I think clearly news and sports are a big part of it, but also some of these really nice, you know, diginets, you know, and things have lots of interesting things. I mean, we have such a huge country. I can guarantee you every generation does everything. So yes, there are Gen Zen people out there that just discovered the flying nun on one of Scott's channels, perhaps, or a sci-fi show or whatever, and they love it. So, how do you find that stuff? I think fast channel change should not be overlooked. And I think when these people aggregate things and they have a program guide, which I agree is essential, they're going to see the top 60 channels are their local channels, right? You can't get away from that. So you'll find all sorts of great Sinclair content right at the top of the guide. You might find some more down below on the fast channels. No big deal. But so we're bullish on all of this, and think people will like that. And local and hyper local have a bright future. Oh, and there was just one more thing. And
Yeah,
yes, you can link to stuff. So you could put up a QR code and say, or go to Netflix to watch this and get a bounty, right? The old Amazon taught us affiliate model. Or in our app, we have in the program guide, for the Cozy channel that we get from NBC, it says at the bottom, sign up for Peacock, right? So there are ways to cross-pollinate as well.
Great. David, what as you think about your offerings and how consumers are discovering new shows, are there any shifts you see on the horizon in terms of just sort of searching for actors or directors, or however it's primarily happening today?
Well, I see there are what people have in common is that they are super frustrated, first of all, and that is still the main problem, that we have not been able to solve this. And then I also think we need to be bold in a way to see that we might want to add even more verticals to this discussion, because it might also be bundles around other types of media, because in the end, this is about fighting for people's time, and bundles will be about having even other types of entertainment within your bundle. Could be audio, could be audiobooks, it could be podcasts, it could be sports, etc., merch. And I see more and more people being very tired of keeping up with all the different subscriptions. So getting the bundle deal together, but not only looking at video, I think is something that will start to happen. Otherwise, stuff is happening much slower than we want to, in a way. So that won't happen maybe this year, but might be happening next year. So people want to spend more time consuming and less time searching, for sure. But I do think that includes more verticals as well, and fight about their time rather than exactly what type of consumption we're talking about.
Gotham, what are you seeing as you speak to some of these content owners about the kinds of things David is talking about, bringing in these interactive elements, or some of the cross-promotion opportunities that Jim alluded to?
Okay, so if we take a step back and talk about aggregation, there are two broad categories of aggregation, right? One is what we call as content aggregation, and the other one is service aggregation. So the large broadcasters are telecom companies like AT&Ts of the world, or the Rogers of the world. What they have done is content aggregation. They have brought so many content owners or content providers into one single umbrella of their own service. Okay, so be it AT&T TV or Direct TV, whatever you want to call them, that's how they brought everybody together under one single umbrella, and they offered one price point or multiple price points depending upon what all channels they want to choose or what all content providers they want to watch. Okay, so that's one piece of it. That's where what David talked about makes much more relevant, because when I'm watching what I want to see at any given point of time, I need to see it in the fastest way. So if I've selected 3 or 4 content providers in my bundle, I need to see the content that these 3 providers are providing in the fastest way. So that's around the content aggregation piece. But when you're talking about service aggregation piece, you are bringing services, multiple OTT services into in one single umbrella, like Sling, like CBS. They have their own channels. We are bringing them together in one OTT service with one price point, but you have the ability to cross-pollinate across these three or four services that they have come together. So in that scenario, the universal search, like Scott was mentioning earlier, plays a pretty important role because you want to reach to the content again much faster than anything else. So depending upon the type of aggregation that we are going with, okay, the search capabilities or the recommendation capabilities play a pretty important role, and how you bring that content to the forefront using a concept called storefront, okay, because in our OTT services that we offer, we have a concept called storefront in which we provide the catalog in the most easy to access manner. So that storefront should be as personalized as possible for different cohorts or for different users at any given point of time using these different types of aggregations. So I feel like a storefront combined with the aggregation capability brings in the best of the both worlds to serve the end users with the content that they want to reach as fast as possible.
Scott, I think Gotham's response touches a bit on this idea of service stacking that we had discussed in a previous call, and of course it also plays into the cross promotion issue we talked about earlier. So, what are you seeing in terms of industry momentum around this, particularly as there have been many predictions that we're going to see some consolidation among these services in the next few years?
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's the natural order of things, right? A bunch of things launch, not all of them work. A few of them aren't at scale. They consolidate. Round two happens. So we're still in round one, right? This is round one. Everybody needs their streaming service. Everybody needs their own streaming service. And what they're going to find, what we are finding, what everybody's finding is the costs of customer acquisition are high and getting higher. I think it was last year, but it might have been the year before, within the same year, Roku doubled their prices, then tripled them, or maybe they tripled them, then doubled them. But at the end of the day, it became outrageous and really, really tough, right, to spend money acquiring customers through the stores, which it had been the way that had worked, and it kind of stopped working. I mean, just from a pure ROI perspective, right? It just became way too expensive, especially if you were operating an ad-supported service. Because the S5 guys that were spending billions and billions of dollars on content were able to spend a lot of money in those stores, thus pricing up the inventory for everybody else. So if you're going to run your own service, you have to get comfortable with how much it costs you to acquire a customer. And if you shift to sort of, how you do that with content, every team I've ever had in the content acquisition part of my life is I give them sort of the same talk, which is there's only two types of content on planet Earth. There's acquisition content and there's retention content, and everything fits into one of those two buckets. Now, what is acquisition content? Acquisition content is a very high bar, right? There's not a lot of it. In case you want to know why the NFL gets so much money for their product, it's one of the few pure acquisition things in life is sports. Why? Because there's an event. And long time ago, TV would create an event around the new episode of Seinfeld, but it's been a while since that was a thing. So now it's a live event. So sports is the most predictable source of live events that you can imagine, which is why sports rights carry a premium, as I said. But then it's the Oscars, it's election night, it's anything where you've got a live event that is going to happen, that brings viewers in. That provides a platform to expose other, not just content necessarily, promote the new Yellowstone season or whatever, but also to promote new platforms to discover more content. I think Fox has been really effective at promoting Tubi throughout all the things that they do, right? You watch NASCAR, they've got Tubi on one of the cars, right? It's a really smart strategy. And this difference between retention content and acquisition content kind of lights the way to sort of how the experience plays out for consumers. There's these big live events, whether it's sports or cultural events. They drive a big audience at once. That provides a promotional platform for the media owners to be able to, frankly, offset the digital customer acquisition costs through programming that in and of itself has advertising and an economy around it.
So do we see as some of these media companies really promote their tier one properties, the things that they've invested in, do we see more commingling of back catalog, older catalog kinds of programming to fast to rival perhaps studios just to drive exposure, or
I don't know if it's to drive exposure. I think it's a lot. I think it's a lot about
fellows. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think I was just saying. I don't think it's about exposure. I think it's about revenue, right? You have to keep in mind these back catalog deals and a lot of the stuff that you see on fast channels today is stuff that was just sitting on shelves, right? It wasn't generating income for the studio in that way. Maybe we licensed it for Diginet or other Diginet licensed it. There's a pay TV license, but now there's this whole new category of licensing called fast channels and AVOD, and even to some degree SVOD, depending on sort of what the product is. That's all kind of found money for the studios, which is great, and it helps sort of fund other things. But at the same time, you see kind of just from a product standpoint, you see an attention shift, right? So you go back to the 90s when the studios and the networks consolidated themselves, right? Now you see studios together with a network, together with a streaming service, but they're cross-licensing. So you'll see something that's a Universal show will show up on Paramount. Something that's a Paramount show will show up on Peacock. And so they're actually programming to their audience, leveraging this new source of revenue. But the discovery services are exposing, it's every 6 months, right? 16-year-olds are all of a sudden into a show that nobody's seen for 25 years, right? It hit somebody's algorithm, and then it caught a thread, and then they tugged on the thread. And, the prototypical example that I point to for a lot of folks is YouTube TV. And if anybody's ever used YouTube TV, they do a really good job of balancing recommendations, an electronic program guide, understanding your usage patterns, recommendations, etc., into kind of a unified experience. And I think that provides a bit of a roadmap for the future. But for live and to create a platform for acquisition, events.
David, you brought up social before. Do you see TikTok, Instagram, etc., serving as a potential, aggregation medium or discovery, certainly discovery medium as we move forward? David?
It's so weird. Exactly when you say my name, I lose you.
I'm sorry.
Could you
AI.
question?
Selective muting. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Could you repeat that quick question?
I'm sorry. Just following up on Scott's point about these old catalog shows getting rediscovered, particularly given what you said earlier about social media.
Yeah.
We talked about MSOs, home service providers. To what extent do you see these, TikTok, Instagram, etc., serving as these vehicles for discovery? Are you looking at integrating them into your own service?
Well, I don't know, to be honest, but it is a hard question. The only thing I see clearly is that the big players in Europe, that is the US players, they want to expose their old back catalogs more and more. They think that is the most exciting thing to keep people, avoid churn, basically. That is why also this the social aspect, where you actually piggyback on someone else to get recommendations, because in the end, where I get recommendations is not digitally. It's more like I'm sitting in a bar meeting a friend, and they then I ask, have you seen anything great lately?
You got to check
Yeah,
out.
I've seen the show, da, 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 da. And that might be 2 years old or 15 years old or even longer. And that is where this content discovery piece comes into the picture, and social in a beautiful mix. And I think everything points towards exactly that, which is less production costs moving forward and more quality. And we already have so much quality in the back catalogs, and how to expose those catalogs better. And that is exactly why, again, content discovery is where we started this discussion, is coming into play. So it's super relevant, exactly what Scott said in a way. So yeah.
Gotham, it looked like you wanted to chime in on that, but I just want to take a minute first to share the results of our audience poll, which was about adoption of the Disney bundle, Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN Plus. We asked folks if they subscribe to it. If so, why? If not, why not? We found that 13% say they subscribe to it. Another 14% said they were considering. 33% said they were not considering because they only one or two of the services interested them. And 40% said they were not considering for another reason. Also worth noting, that being our audience poll, this is folks who tend to be more media insiders, so it's certainly not representative, but interesting that the leading cause of not considering isn't that lack of interest in at least one of the services. So Gotham, let me turn it back to you then. You seem to have some thoughts on social.
Yeah, I'll explain the social part, but there is another piece on how we can get access to the content much faster than what we can think of. But social is definitely something that is helping in the Southeast Asia markets, I would say, because as David rightly mentioned, there's lots of interaction that happens in casual settings where we share about the content that we are watching, and then the friends and family, they pick up and they start watching. That's the usual phenomenon that I observed myself living in the States for so many years. That happens, okay? But in the Southeast Asia, there is a lot of social media based recommendations that are enabling the content to get distributed much faster. For example, we are with one of the customers in India, and they pretty heavily use Facebook, and there is no TikTok in India because it's been banned, but the other equivalent tools in the market that they resort on. And what we have seen is there are millions and millions of views on the promos they publish in these social media websites, social media sites, and which in turn generate a lot of footfalls on the main apps. Okay, so we have seen that, and there is a lot of data that we get to see that is proving that the footfalls are basically through the social media channels. But there is another piece that these Southeast Asian OTT service providers are using, which is the push notifications. Every morning or evening, we get information about the content that is getting published into the catalog. So as and when we click that particular notification, we get directly into that content and it starts playing. So it's a beautiful feature that I'm very impressed of, and I use it personally. And I think that's another means of getting to access the content faster. So these are the two areas that I can think of how the users are getting benefited to watch the content they like,
Great. I'd like to just remind our audience that one of the nice advantages of this format is that we don't need to wait to the end for questions. So I'd like to share one of the audience questions with the panel. It is about ATSC 3.0, which was brought up earlier. And the question is, what impact do we see ATSC 3.0 having on the broadcast live content market? Scott, you have an interest in taking that one?
Yeah, well, actually, I have a contractual obligation at Sinclair to talk about ATSC3 anytime I talk to anybody publicly. So I appreciate the opportunity to check that box and keep my job. So thank you. I mean, listen, 3.0 is going to do a lot of things. And we're now moving from the stage of it where it can do a lot of things to we're determining what sort of things it should be doing. One of the things that's very clear is there'll be more channel capacity, and so the ability to have a dedicated high school sports channel in a market where that makes sense becomes a thing. The ability to have a live traffic channel becomes a thing, and people have to decide whether these are good ideas or bad ideas, but now they're technically possible. Here in LA, I have an antenna on my roof, and yes, you heard me correctly, I have an antenna on my roof. And I get 208 free channels. And one of the things that we're pretty sure we don't have to do any significant research on is consumers will always like free. And so to the extent that you can combine the free access that over-the-air provides, now enhanced by ATSC3, and ATSC3 is basically IP broadcast. So theoretically, anything we can do on OTT or connected TV, now we can do over the air. We think that's going to be a very, very powerful platform. And then in terms of our ability to cover multiple live streams, it gives you the same kind of ability that we have on OTT to create a pop-up channel or a temporary channel specifically to provide different ways to view an event. If anybody watched the national championship football game a couple of weeks ago, I think ESPN had 5 or 6 different ways that you could do that. ATSC3 allows us to do that in broadcast. One of the things that makes ATSC 3.0 particularly powerful is the ability to serve targeted ads. And I think that kind of points us to one of the barriers when you talk about aggregation. All of these ad-supported plays, ad-supported services, ad-supported channels are going to rely more and more on targeted advertising that's fueled by first-party consented data. And the ability of an aggregator to collect that data in a way that's useful to the channel or service to be able to use in targeting advertising with all of the appropriate privacy restrictions around moving data around between services. I think that's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out.
Great, Jim. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on some of these possibilities that Scott mentions as broadcasters experiment with more of these kinds of features. Is there an opportunity to implement that over streaming? Are they catching up to other providers, or are other media properties catching up to them?
Well, I'm very bullish on the ATSC3. We started what we do, which we call local TV streaming, knowing that was coming and all the good things Scott is talking about. And our main mission with ATSC3 is helping it get to the 300 million devices in the US that aren't ATSC3 enabled, but you'll still be able to get, hopefully, certainly some, maybe all of the functionality. Meanwhile, the cars will start having it in televisions and to some degree other devices. So we see it as a big boon, and the bottom line is local is such a great attraction. Even if it's a local rerun channel that you can get in every market, right? You get targeted ads now to this section of San Jose as opposed to blanking the world and all that. So it's one of the reasons why we predicted that OTA would be rising the last 5 years, and it has. It's one of the reasons we believe that Gen Z is going to, embrace it as well, as they do more lean back and less, in your face with your phone stuff. So we're very bullish on it too. And Scott didn't even go into all the other things ATSC3 will do in the data casting world, but we think it bodes well for the local broadcast market, and we think that's a major national asset. The last thing we want is all these channels to go national to giant media companies. Even your local NBC station or your local NBC affiliate are local people, right? So it's a really good thing, and we're glad to see the progress.
I'm sorry to hear that Scott fell a bit short on his contractual obligation, but
Well, the question was about content that didn't get,
All right, we'll give him a break. Okay, so we have another audience question. This one is a bit of an anti-bundling question. Do we ever see a time when we will have true a la carte channel selection without having to rely on bundling? If I want to just watch BBC World News, ESPN, CNBC, AMC, and the Tennis Channel, can I get those without paying for a bunch of other channels?
No. Next question.
Moving on.
Yeah, no, for small channels, that might become possible. It's just, and there'll be free channels, so you'll just, but yeah, it's tough to see it happening with the major media companies.
I mean, what I could see is people offering a single channel a la carte, right? So could I see a world where you could just go buy Tennis Channel because you're a tennis enthusiast? Yeah, I could see that. But an aggregated service that would have the rights and ability to offer something where you can just pick and choose channels completely a la carte, I find that really hard to believe.
Yeah, at least in my view, there will be a base channel, that base set of channels one has to select. And as Scott mentioned, from there on, they can go for adding additional channels. I think that's what we have done in during the DirecTV Now days. We had three offerings, and we can call them as silver, gold, platinum. Okay, I don't remember the exact names. After that, we gave an option to add channels for each of them. So for
you could see where we've gotten to that point. You could see a world where that base tier of channels are free channels. They're fast channels.
Yeah.
So you certainly could see that.
Scott, I want to come back also to something you mentioned about the need for, or the value of, targeted advertising, which is, it comes back to something I tried to speak about earlier, which is the need for a variety of programming genres in the bundle. If you're going to want kids programming, sports, big entertainment. So at that point, then, do we have to start thinking about technology or implementing technology so that we know who's watching, or change things if a mix of people are watching? Or are these discussions that you think are inevitable, or are they happening now? Or
they're happening now.
Yeah.
They're happening right now. I mean, the Nielsen sample, which has been, the standard currency in television for as long as I can remember, and I'm sure it goes back further. It has to go back further. I only really remember yesterday, and even then, barely. The sort of the measurement methodology and the way you sell are linked together, right? The Nielsen sample and the sample methodology led us to a world where we sell based on CPMs and gross rating points and those sorts of things. Most of the rest of the world's already moved to impression-based sales, impression-based sales to digitally targeted ads, individually targeted ads, pretty short path from one to the other. And what makes targeted advertising more valuable is the data that you have behind it. And you can't really do the sorts of things people could do 3, 4, 5 years ago, where you could have a data source and you could have a user and you could try to match the user up with the data source, come up with something, send it out to an exchange, come back with the ad based on the rates. Going forward, it's really about first-party consented data. It's really about the types of things that, like, Tubi, I think, has done a particularly good job of this, right? Tubi, everything's free, but you register. And when you register, they're tracking everything that you watch. So they know your viewing patterns, they know your viewing behavior, they know what you like, they know what you don't watch, and they're able to target advertising so you get a higher rate for those ads as a result, present better content to the consumer as a result, hopefully a better, more relevant ad experience to the consumer as a result, and it creates kind of a win-win between the consumer and the platform.
I wanted to ask a question about infrastructure a little bit. While a lot of these bundles may be new, a lot of the services that they're bringing together have tens of millions or even more users. What are some of the kinds of technical challenges in tying these things together from a billing perspective, or we talked about opportunities to streamline navigation and discovery as well. Are any of these inhibitors to doing this, Jim? Yeah.
Well, so it is a big challenge, and one of the worries I have is these large companies are spending almost too much time on building streaming technology rather than working together. I sometimes refer to it as building their own Maginot lines of streaming, because the thing is moving really fast. In our particular case, we have transcoding in each TV market, and so the third-party aggregator app, actually the client. So if you have their client and you're in San Francisco, it would hit our server directly, and you would never know it was us. It would be a say the local Sinclair channel. You wouldn't know we were even involved. But we provide what we think is the simplest, fastest, lowest cost way to do it. So it's a big win, particularly for ad-supported television. And that it turns out to be pretty easy sell to aggregators or even the major networks when we talk to them about the right way to do the architecture. Other ways, I think at the end of the day, if you make a connection and there's a good internet behind you, even just the public internet works pretty darn well. You don't have to get too fancy. I don't think it's the hardest problem if their clients are just able to go to different sources.
Okay, well, we are just about out of time. So I want to thank all my guests for an invigorating discussion and offer you all a chance to say farewell before we sign off.
I'll start.
Go ahead.
This is always great to be on a Parks conference. A really good selection of people on this panel. So another good job. Thanks for that. And I look forward to more.
Thank you, Jim. Gautam?
I say the same thing. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Cheers.
David? Whoop, David? David? Okay. Scott? Okay, great. Well, I want to again thank all my panelists and just to discuss some really exciting products and research opportunities coming up. I'm going to hand it back to Jennifer Kent.
Ross, and great job with that panel. And in fact, the way that you ended that panel was a perfect tee up for our next session. So a lot of talk on advertising and measurement and what that's going to look like and how that's going to change the future of streaming and the video ecosystem generally. So we welcome everyone back. Our next session is June 15th. So we'll be talking all about advertising and live content, measurement, and investment. So be on the lookout. And I think that you can even save to your calendar right from the Swap Card platform to make sure that you have that noted. And so we're looking forward to seeing you there on June 15th. Thank you all so much for your questions and participating in the polling too. That's so fantastic. I also just wanted to mention that if you weren't aware, Parks Associates has a OTT video market tracker where we publish monthly on the top stories and movements in the market and give our analysts' take on what that means, as well as we track over 400 North American OTT services. If you are a service provider, it's a very good chance that we actually have a live profile of your work, and we may also be estimating your subscribers and also your ad-based viewers if you're ad-based. So if you're interested in seeing that product and working with us, please reach out. We also have a few new studies to take a look at. These two come actually from our consumer survey side. So on the survey side, we have video consumption trends, content and platforms that really looks at this fragmentation of video viewing across a variety of platforms and how that's trended. You know, we have trending data certainly past before the pandemic. And so seeing how these patterns have changed and where they've settled out is really, really interesting. And our annual study on video consumption and video streaming consumers' perception of OTT models, their use of the big services, how we're seeing everybody shift in what sort of business models they're watching. Are they moving too fast, et cetera? What's really the consumer view? So thank you all so much. If you're interested in Parks Associates in speaking at our events or sponsoring a white paper, a webinar, or one of our podcasts, please reach out to our team. Otherwise, we will see you in June. Thanks so much.